right, guys, I was asked a great question the other day. It was, can I count my credit card as my emergency fund? In other words, this person was wanting to know if their credit card, is sufficient just to be their emergency fund. And my answer to that is an absolute resounding no. There is a lot of problems with that plan. Your emergency fund is all about options and flexibility, and too much about credit cards are outside of your control. For starters, if you're using a credit card to solve your emergency, oh hello zombie, then you're compounding your problems, not solving them. Instead of whatever it is that is your emergency at the time, you are now in a position where you're creating debt. And that's not where anyone wants to be. Beyond that, it may make you lazy when it comes to trying to resolve whatever your emergency is. Instead of looking for a do-it-yourself solution, or instead of being cost-conscious, instead of shopping around a little bit like you would do if you were spending your hard-earned cash, well, you might be, mighty quick to just plop down the card, forget about it. Oh, and while you're at it, add in this double mocha latte, and I think I'll pick up something for the kid. No, that's not how it's supposed to be in an emergency. Your cash reserves will make you think twice, especially if there's a slight hoop that you have to jump through in order to access them. Now, the point to emergency funds is accessibility. Which brings us to another thing. If you have set aside a credit card for emergencies, it might not be there when you actually have one. Case in point, my wife and I went through this. We had locked away a credit card to use just in case of an emergency, and we weren't using it. We were using cash largely for everything, but we got a letter saying that you're due to inactivity on your account, your card has been canceled. And we're like, what? And yep, sure enough, the card had been canceled. So the thing that we had been counting on for an emergency was no longer there should we have needed it. Now, thankfully, it wasn't our only plan. But that is something that can happen to you. A reduced credit line can happen. A couple of years ago, when things were tight, actually it might have been more than a few years ago, we received a notification. We had a good credit history and everything, yet we still received a letter saying that, your available credit has been reduced. And it ended up actually being a bit of a pain in the ass. Because we had intended to use that card to take advantage of some points and whatnot. We had some plans we were going to utilize that card for, and all of it just blew up in an instant because of an economic downturn. Even though we had great credit, they were reducing credit for everybody, and that's an important aspect of the whole credit card plan. It's not in your control. And if something's affecting the entire country, odds are credit card companies are going to tighten up their old purse strings. Remember, they're gamblers. That's what they are. They're gambling on your ability to pay it back. Well, in an economic downturn that affects the whole country, unemployment goes up, people lose their jobs, people get downsized, and so they reduce their risk at that point in time. Another thing with credit cards is they might not work, man. We had, believe it or not, even though we live kind of in the center of the country, we were affected by Hurricane Ike. Hurricane Ike came through as an ice storm for us. And a lot of the power was out. There was a lot of people that were without electricity. There was a lot of businesses without electricity. But commerce still goes on, even in those circumstances. Yet we couldn't use credit cards for anything. We had to use cash. If we didn't have cash, we were out of luck. And that can happen to you. Think of Hurricane Katrina. Think of the many hurricanes, thunderstorms, tornadoes, natural disasters that come through. And you just think of the power outages that people experience regularly out west, thanks to wildfires and whatnot. It could be a case where you're not able to use your card. And something that you're not able to use your card, thinking of economic downturns, turns and whatnot, is your mortgage or your rent. Most mortgage companies don't accept credit cards as a payment. Or maybe they do, whatever, but in this particular case, again, it goes back to the whole debt thing, right? You're creating debt. You're borrowing money. You're taking a high interest loan just to pay something that you're already paying interest on in the case of a mortgage. Man, that is crazy. And that, talk about compounding your problems. Everybody's goal is to get out of debt and to be self-sufficient, not go into debt just because of a minor hiccup. Lastly, if a credit card is your only financial plan, you're out of options. You don't have any other recourse. This zombie out here is bugging me. I'm gonna go deal with him. With cash reserves, you've got tons of options. You tend to be more judicious with this. Really, the solution when it comes to emergency funds is kind of a threefold approach. You want to have cash on hand somewhere for situations like I described, where the power might be out or whatever. It's an option that you're presented with. You want to have some money in savings or in your checking account that you could get to, and those are two different things. Cash on hand, the old money stuffed in a book, under a mattress, whatever the case may be. You ought to have some of it. You ought to have some money in your account that's not allocated towards bills and things. You should have the bulk of your money in savings or whatnot, where you've got to jump through an extra hoop. Used to be we would put it into a money market account. And because the idea was that it would keep up with inflation, it wouldn't get drained quite as bad. Now that's not so much the case. It's not a great option for you. But keeping the money in the savings account, making yourself have to go through an extra hoop, that makes you think about things. That goes to that whole laziness, that goes to being judicious, trying to find the do-it-yourself thing. Lastly, and I want to make sure I've stressed this well enough. Yes, you should have some available credit on your cards in the event of an emergency, but under no circumstances should that be what you count on for your emergencies. The reasons for that is those types of emergencies where you might have to rent a car, rent a hotel, buy a plane ticket, something of that nature that might require rent a truck, where you might need it under those circumstances. You want to have access to that. And a lot of times if you're using cash instead of a card in those circumstances, they'll put a hold on an even larger amount. Had to go and help my daughter move out of her apartment kind of at last minute, short notice. Had to rent a truck to go up there. Thankfully, thankfully we had room on our card at the time. We were a little tight financially, had just taken care of a bunch of big bills and whatnot, so our cash reserves were not what they should have been. So under those circumstances, were we grateful for it? Yes. Should it be your primary emergency plan? Absolutely not. Please save yourself the trouble. Don't make that mistake. Plan out properly. Start setting aside some cash. Keep some cash on hand at home. And you'll reap the benefits of it. You'll be glad that you did when something does go south and when you really end up needing it. It'll come in handy. Trust me.